Welcome back for another episode of Branching Out with Sierra. Today we're on episode 34, The Heartbeat of Business, How Culture Drives Success. And I know we hear a lot of talk about the word culture in business. So today I brought in someone who is an expert when talking about culture in an organization, my friend Dawn Shuler from the Shuler Group. And we are going to be kind of digging into bringing the human or humanity back to business and what that looks like and the things we should be thinking about for our teams, for our organizations, really caring for our people. So I'm excited to share with you guys today my friend and colleague, Dawn Shuler. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Sierra. It's always a delight to be in your presence.
Aw, that's so sweet. Thank you. It's so funny. So the newest additions to this room, we have Kramer behind you on the wall, and it is so funny now because when I start talking to someone, all I see is Kramer over your shoulder right now, and it kills me. So if I randomly snicker, it's because of the look he's giving me. It's not you, I swear.
Okay. I do think I'm funny, but I'm probably not quite as funny as I think I am.
Well, you have Einstein on one shoulder and Kramer on the other, so... No, seriously, thank you for being here, and that was very kind. So before we dig in with the first question, I would love for you to share a little bit of your background, where you're from, what led you to where you are today, sitting here on this podcast with me.
Oh my goodness. I feel like every answer is a story or a story in the making, where I'm from. Oh my gosh. So we can always start the way that I do, which is I was born in the backseat of a car in Mississippi, moved to Virginia, Norfolk, then Pennsylvania, then Oregon, then Texas, then Maryland, and now I'm back in Virginia. So I don't really have an answer to where I'm from. I'm from all those places, I guess. Let's see. As far as the business, so I started my business in 2002, and it was really with an eye to helping businesses. And I started out assisting, and then I was managing, and came up to be COO of a virtual training institute. Even now, I'm a fractional COO for one of my clients. So there's been this love of business and organizations and that organizational structure. But then also when I came out of college, came out as an English teacher. And so the idea of communication and how we relate to each other has just, it's been in the mix. It's all the ingredients that I've put in the Shuler Group stew, so to speak.
No, that's great. And you get to work with your husband as a part of the Shuler Group. Which,
I do.
How is that to work with your husband?
So it's really interesting because I was married before. My first husband started his business after I'd had my successful business. And he said, I don't want you anywhere in my business. A few years later, his business failed. Not saying that it had anything to do with his decree that I was not going to be in the business, but so there's that. We obviously were not going to be able to work together. Mark, on the other hand, he rolls up his sleeves. He does whatever is needed. His background is as a psychotherapist, a very eclectic background also, but he brings that relationships and communication. Mm-hmm. And so we've kind of overlaid both of our skill sets and our experiences to bring all that in to organizations and to really help make them work better, make them healthier, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that, thinking about how to make it healthier. I'm obsessed with growth and continuous improvement, but when we see it as the health of the business or the health of the people within the business, there's always room for improvement in our health, right?
Yes.
Our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, but I like thinking about that for organizations as well. Thank you for giving background. I'm sure more of that will come out in conversation. But I always start by asking when you first saw yourself as a leader and what that might have been like for you, what that experience was, maybe even how you define leadership. What does that look like for you today? Do you have an answer to that question?
Gosh, I will give, what is the word? I will be transparent and let the audience know that I had a heads up to some of the questions that you're going to ask. And that first one, I thought, I don't know how to answer that question. Seeing myself as a leader, and when I first saw myself as a leader, and I think it's just because I just do what's needed. Mm-hmm. Mark and I have this term that we call the vodka conversation. And so when my first marriage was breaking apart, and I had to be on my own, and I had children to support. And so I re-upped my business, and Mark said, you're amazing. And I said, no, I'm not. I do what I have to do. And he said, no, you could be going home and drinking a fifth of vodka every day.
It's true.
You have a choice. So we call that the vodka conversation.
Okay.
And so that's what I just see, like, I just do what needs to be done. Oh, this needs to be done. Oh, they need a COO for this organization. Well, I know what needs to be done. Let me jump in and do it. And and you do this and you do that. And how about we strategize and all of that? So I don't know. I think we all are probably leaders to some extent. It's maybe a combination of how confident we are. I tend to be pretty confident. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It just means I'm going to give you my all. You've got 100% of me, whether as a friend or as a business partner or a client, whatever it is. So I think our leadership styles obviously
You're okay.
vary, as well as they just manifest differently. But I think we're all leaders to some extent.
Well, I'm going to bring you up to speed, and that is the whole purpose of this podcast, is to help people understand that because they have influence, the ability to influence during every interaction, they are a leader, no matter title or not, right? And I always say, stay-at-home mom, you're a leader within your family. You're impacting those children on a regular basis. My very first episode, I know you haven't heard this one, but maybe you should go listen to it, was talking about leadership in the Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru, and how even that interaction, picking up my coffee, how that could have changed that person's day and could have had an impact. So that's exactly what I want people to take away, is how leadership principles apply to everyday life, because we are leaders, whether we, define ourselves as one or not. You are. I know that you are. But in your mind, you're just getting things done that need to be done. You are a person that wants to be impactful and support others, right? So it comes so naturally to you, is what I'm hearing.
Thank you. I also am a big believer in how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And there's not, and maybe it's because I'm female, but I don't compartmentalize. Oh, this is how I do work, and then this is how I do home or personal life. No, I'm just Dawn. Yeah. And I show up as who I am, regardless of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand that completely. I agree. And that concept, I talk about that with the wheel of life, right? Looking at the full picture and where you are in life, not just separating personal and professional. I totally agree. All right, so let's talk about the topic for today. We're going to be digging into culture. We hear that word thrown around a lot. How do you define culture when we're looking at an organization? What does that even mean?
And that's a great question, because it's a concept. It's somewhat abstract. And so to have this is the definition of culture, it doesn't really exist. How the different ways that we define it are, it's kind of like the personality of an organization. So, you are a friendly, get it done kind of person. That's part of your personality. Well, an organization has a personality as well, and we could call that its culture. Are people supportive and cooperative, or is there a competitive, to the teeth kind of atmosphere? But it's what I think of as the personality. It's how people do things, not necessarily what they do, but how they do
the how. So why is culture worth spending a podcast episode talking about? Why is it vital to an organization's success?
So there's been some research, and I am not one of those people who can just rattle off statistics.
I can't either. It's
like,
okay.
If I have it written down, I can look at it. But so you can always ask me, for the sources later. But there's been research on, if you think about the financial curve of a business and then the culture curve of the business. And the research shows that when organizations focus on the culture curve, like let's improve culture, that the financial curve improves more quickly.
Okay.
If you do, let's focus on the finance, get the business stable, let's do all of that, and then we'll focus on culture, the growth of the business is not nearly as massive as it is when they focus on culture first.
Okay.
And it's because you talked about the belief of growing and developing and all of that. I believe that organizations are organisms. They're living, breathing entities, if you will, because they're made up of humans.
Right.
And humans are growing and developing and adapting and evolving, some more than others, some, to different degrees. But that's why you focus on culture, because you've got this living organism that is always changing. And even if you make widgets, even if you have automation, you have conveyor belts, you still have people who are running those or running the business. And so focus on your people first.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I like thinking about it as an organism, the amount of attention that it requires, right? You can't be complacent. You can't wait to think about the people later. You won't have any people left, right? I was thinking about when I had asked you submitted the application to be a guest, and you shared a motto. Tell us about your motto that you go by and how that came to be.
When people thrive, companies thrive. And first of all, I love the word thrive. You hear, I don't want to just survive, I want to thrive. And it's born from this belief that, so many beliefs. What if your job, work, wasn't a 4-letter word, like a bad 4-letter word?
Yeah.
Something that you had to do. Well, I have to make money to survive and blah, 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 blah. But what if it was something that you could use your gifts and your skills, and you got validation and acknowledgement, and you really felt like you were contributing? Like, what if that's what work was? So there's that. That's part of that thriving. And then I also have this belief, and I have no idea if it will ever come true, and maybe not in my lifetime, that if you think about the villages of old, like hundreds, maybe even thousands of years ago, thousands, I don't know if they had villages, but whatever. But everybody had a purpose. Everybody had their gifts. And you didn't ask the stonemason to go create a tapestry. You didn't ask the forger to cook. Not like the stone forger, like forging money. Or
Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, like, what do you have a forge? Like, what do you call that? Whatever, it doesn't matter. But everybody had their gifts and their skills, and everybody worked together. Everybody came together. And imagine if at least work was like that, to where my newsletter just came out today, and it's about the value of community and creating community in your organization.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you right there. I didn't see a newsletter in my inbox. I'm just saying.
You're probably not on my list, because you know what? I am a good girl, and I don't just add people to my list. They have to subscribe.
Okay, well, I would like to be on your list. Right, I'm giving you permission to add me.
Okay.
I would like to see your newsletters. Okay. I would like to share them with my people.
Will do.
Okay, awesome. I had to call you out. No, I appreciate that. No one should just add someone to their list. I just didn't know there was a list.
I understand. Maybe I need to change that practice, but
No, I love the motto. I think it makes total sense. Now, some people don't believe it until they see it. So this is where I think I would like to hear an example of maybe a shift that you've seen when a company decides to invest in working with you at the Shuler Group, you and Mark, and really focusing on culture. Can you give an example of a shift that you've seen take place, and what that process even looked like in engaging with you?
Absolutely. So we worked with a CPA firm that at the time it was 30 years old. The firm was founded by 2 CPAs. All they wanted to do was do taxes.
Okay.
And they grew bit by bit over the 30 years. And then the third partner came on and became managing partner. Well, this company had been around for 30 years. They had no mission, no vision, no value statement. We said, well, do you have an org chart? And he said, an ordnance chart? I was in the Navy. I know what that is. Like, an organization chart.
Yeah.
No. So we actually spent a year and a half working with them to develop all these things. And what I loved, and we did a great big organizational chart, and with like little sticky notes, and you could see, his name, Thomas's name was everywhere, right? And then, but it helped him see. to this day, he still has that, all the great big sticky easel pad papers in the office. He says, people come in, what is that? And he explains, this is where we were, this is where we are, this is where we're heading to. And then when we help them come up with their values, they had this aha that said, if we're going to live these values, we know we have some clients that don't meet these values. We have a couple of clients we need to fire.
Yeah.
And they had been flatlining their revenue for several years. And so with this work that they did, which really, if you think about it, it's that the health of the organization, it's culture, it's all of that. They started to, instead of flatlining, they were seeing an increase in profits.
That's extremely impactful. And I agree. And I am astounded at the number of businesses that I meet that don't have those things in place, right? Because you don't know what you don't know, and you're starting your business because you're passionate about this thing that you're really good at. And, maybe you don't have a business background and know these are the foundational components that you need to have in place as you're building your team, making sure folks are in alignment with the values that have been established. Make sure everyone's bought into the vision, right? And that's a team effort. So, maybe somebody's listening and they don't have those things done as it stands today, a vision, a mission, core values. Can you just briefly explain the difference between a vision and mission? Because I get that question all the time from people. They think it's one and the same. How do you define the difference between them?
So again, there could be different definitions, but so for me, for vision, it's kind of like what I said. The vision for the Shuler Group is, if organizations kind of used that villages of old concept and brought that into the organization. So that's the vision. That's what I wish will happen in the future because of the work that we're doing. The mission is a little bit more tangible. So for us, it's the things that we do to help basically people work better together. Whether that's communication, training, or some of the assessments we have, or whatever it might be, or it could be executive coaching, it could be staff development, but whatever to help them work better together. That's our mission. Help people work better together, help people thrive, organizations thrive.
It's perfect. No, I agree. I always think of vision as future state, right? What you want to see in the future, the impact you want to have through the business, but the mission being boots on the ground. What are we doing today to achieve that vision? And it's more focused on, like what you just shared, the services that you're providing, how you're helping people to achieve their goals. So core values. Do you mind sharing some of your values?
I would love to, because I talk about them all the time.
Yeah.
So we have our values that we've created for the Shuler Group, because that's a little bit more of what the business does and how it does things. My personal core values are a little different, although they obviously have impacted the corporate ones. But my number one core value is authenticity.
Love it. Yeah.
And I told you, I am who I am. You asked me some questions, before we started the interview, and I'm like, well, here you go. Here's all the answers. You said, wow, you go deep fast. Well, that's Dawn. My second core value is connection. And it's second because you have to have authenticity to have the real connection. Yeah. And then my third core value is sacred space. My environment, whether we're talking physical or mental or spiritual, is super important to me. And so I've done a lot of work on those various areas to make my environment really healthy, supportive, nourishing.
Yeah, that's great. I can see too how it carries over to the professional side. A lot of business owners, if I'm taking them through a core value exercise, they say, are we talking about my business or personally? And I'm like, well, I would hope they're pretty much one and the same. If you have built your business, I hope that you've built it based on what you value most, right?
Absolutely.
But let's say an organization, if they're listening and they don't have established core values, what's the process that organizations would go through? How would you support them in identifying them? There's hundreds out there. We do see some very common ones. If you go to a website, go to About Us, you might see some overlap between organizations, but how do you go about identifying them and agreeing upon them as a team?
So the exercise we take our clients through is getting their leadership team, which could be, whatever their executive team is, whatever. We get them all in a room in person, and we just have them start throwing out words. Throw out words that, are important or whatever it might be. And so we have maybe 2-3 pages, easel paper. I love my easel paper.
Yeah, me too.
With all these words. And then and everybody individually is throwing out verbally. And then we say, okay, so let's try to narrow it down a little bit, because now we've got 50 words. Let's narrow it down. And, let's circle the ones that are important, so that we try to get it down to, between 3 and 6. And, what we've seen is when they're engaged, and everybody's, we did this last year with a nonprofit, and where they were having some culture issues, and we said, okay, let's sit down. What's truly important? You've got your values are written on the wall, like a lot of organizations do, but there's still some issues. So let's dive deeper. So we did that. And what the feedback that we got afterwards was that these were conversations that the leadership team could hold their direct reports and staff members. And likewise, the staff members could say, hey, we spent this half day at this retreat. We said this was important. That's not really showing up right now, is it? And so they use that as a springboard to solve some of those problems that they were having.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times values are chosen because it's almost like checking the box. Okay, we have our values, but I think the important conversation after that is really defining what they mean, because you and I might completely define the same value differently, and talking about what does it look like in action in the business. Let's talk about what it looks like to value this, right?
Yep.
What do we expect to see if someone walks through the doors? How will they know we value blank, right? So those key conversations have to take place too. So I don't want someone listening to say, oh, I'm going to go through this process. We're going to identify our values, and they check the box and they forget that extra step of getting on the same page about what it even means and looks like.
Exactly. There's a great article, and you and I may have talked about this offline, because it came out last summer. It was in the Harvard Business Review, and it was an article on values and culture. And went through a couple of examples. The author had been with some sort of money market fund firm. And she said, HR came in and wrote all the values on we've done this values work, and they wrote them on the wall. They even had little credit card size things that people could put in their wallets with the 6 core values. And of course, one of them was integrity, and another one was ethics. And then a year and a half later, something like a handful of executives were brought up on 17 charges of fraud and ethics violation. And so that just speaks to your point of we checked a box.
That's not funny, but that's funny.
I know. It's
how ironic.
We checked a box, but yet we're not living it. And so I was actually giving a talk at a conference on the importance of culture, and I did some research, and this is really not a plug for Progressive Insurance, but I did a lot of research on their website. We do use them for our insurance, so we have what's the word? We have tangible evidence of how these show up. But their number one core value is be honest, and that means if you have to, give the customer the bad news. And we've seen that where we've said, here's this issue, this thing, and they say, we know this isn't what you want to hear, but this is what you need to know. Well, I'd much rather that authenticity piece, right? I would much rather know if there's bad news and the real truth, because then I can deal with it. And they've got several others, but they didn't just say this is our value, and they said this is how it shows up. The article that I mentioned, Harvard Business Review, said you need to have the values so well defined, that it guides somebody's actions during their workday. So if your number one value is be honest and give the customer the bad news, and you've got this opportunity to do A or B, but you've got this very clear, they call it value statements. it guides your behavior. And
Yeah.
that's what people should be looking for if they don't have any kind of values, or even if they do, reworking them and saying, does this really apply to our day-to-day business life? What are the value statements we can put in place that really help people understand? Amazon evidently has a, when they're doing creative brainstorming, it's I think a 2-pizza rule.
Okay.
In other words, if they have more people that can eat 2 pizzas, they have too many people.
Interesting. How many slices? Pizza's the same size, right? But
Right. Well, you eat 1, you eat 2 slices, or you're really
How
hungry
full
that
am I
day,
getting?
you eat 3.
No, that's interesting.
But it's a way to, if they think that the creativity can get diluted if you've got
stifled.
40 people in a brainstorming session. Well, here's one way to guide those actions.
Ooh, you just set me up for a perfect segue, because you can't always have all the people in the room, but you still value people's feedback. I believe you have a tool that maybe you created to help with that.
Oh,
see how you set me up for that?
You know what? You can pay me later, or I'll pay you later. However that
Someone's
works.
getting paid.
Someone's getting paid. It's our company climate inventory, and we are extremely proud of it, because when we talked about healthy organizations, this is an assessment, an inventory to really get an idea of how healthy an organization is. It's not just employee engagement. It's not just a culture tool. It really measures leadership and management effectiveness, communication, job satisfaction, satisfaction with benefits and compensation. And there's open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. And so those open-ended questions, and there's no limit, so we get gems and in that, where they've got some really good ideas, or they say, this is how this is affecting me, or we were doing this and I love that, let's keep doing that. And so organizations that do that, they get this overall because sometimes the executives will say, oh, we've got a great culture, or it's really good. No, it's all good. And then other people are going, do you work at the same organization I do? And then there's that softening that can go up the chain, right? This is a really big issue, but by the time it gets up to the leadership team, it's been softened. It's like the princess and the pea.
Yeah.
The pea is way down at the bottom, but it's gotten so softened they don't really see it for the issue that it truly is.
Yeah. No, it's a great tool. What can you provide just a couple of examples of questions that might be on it? I know that teams can help create the questions and drive that as well. Yep. So it's truly customizable to the organization. But can you give an example of what types of questions you have asked in the past and seen really great feedback on that really helped with decision making?
Absolutely. And so you mentioned that it's customized, and so sometimes our clients are brilliant. Most of the time our clients are brilliant. And so they'll add a question, and we'll go, oh my goodness, that's a great question. We're adding that to our base.
So it keeps getting better all the time.
So it has grown a bit in the years. But one of my favorite questions is, would you reapply for your current position? And then please explain your answer above. So the first one is, yes, no, not sure, whatever. And then explain it, and that gave, that is now a standard question, but the client that added that a few years ago, they wanted to know, because she had been with that organization for close to 20 years. And she said, I've done 3 or 4 different jobs. So I'm not doing the job I originally applied for. And what I'm doing right now, so it's just get really some interesting information, well, if I knew what I knew now, I would do things differently, or the job description wasn't really fleshed out, or not the job I originally applied for, but where I am now, I really love. So that gives that deeper insight for the organization to get a sense of how their people are feeling.
Yeah. Well, and we all know that people have feelings that they don't always share, because out of fear of how it might impact their relationship, their position, so how do you handle that? Are there names attached
Nope.
to anything?
It is
Okay,
completely
this is an
anonymous.
important piece.
It is completely anonymous, and we share that with the clients. We share that when they take, when the employees, and it's all employees. And all we know is if there's 20 people in an organization and we have 19 responses, they have IDs, and it's usually by number 1, number 2, number 3, like in order of how they took it. But there's, we don't know, we don't even know who's.
I think that's important too, right?
Absolutely.
Because you start to paint a picture in your mind based on specific people and, oh, well,
right.
I've already heard a little bit about that person.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And some of our clients, they take this annually. And so we have one that we just finished their 6th company climate inventory. And we've done some work with them and training over the years. So we know a lot of the people. And when even we can figure out who is saying what, then we're like, oh, that's, we need to. And so we have a summary of all of those open-ended questions and their responses. And so we summarize it instead of here's a list of all the textual responses.
No, I think that's awesome. I think it's great. It shows they're coming back 6 years of doing that. They're seeing improvement. They're seeing the impact of working with you. So that's awesome. What would you say are some of the main blind spots that organizations might have that you go through this process and now all of a sudden it's illuminated for the first time? They're now aware. You use the word communication. Of course, that's very broad, but what does that look like? What are some of the key pain points that you've stepped in as the Shuler Group and helped companies solve?
So we've broken it down into 3. We see the 3 consistent issues come up with organizations. So communication,
okay.
and you're right, 'cause it's broad.
It is broad.
It's very broad, and it can cover so many things. That's a whole other podcast episode just on communication. 2, technology,
Okay.
and systems and processes.
Okay.
That's usually where we see that those are the top 3 that almost one of those, if not more, always show up in the top 3. And then there may be some things like employee engagement. One of the other questions that we ask that I love is, do you see yourself working here in 3 years? And when we have an organization where more than half of the people cannot answer yes, we let them know. I mean, that shows up in our report and our recommendations. Like, you could have an employee retention problem.
Yeah.
You might want to start looking at that.
I think what's really cool is you're not just providing a summary of what you find, but you also are equipped with the tools to help them solve the problems you discover, right?
Yes.
So I love data and analytics, but then what do you do with the information once you have it? And there's nothing more frustrating for me than to see someone take an assessment and then it gathers dust on a shelf somewhere and they do nothing with it. You've invested how much money, how much time into doing this, and then you never talk about it again. You don't create a common language around it, right?
Oh, that's the worst thing that I think an organization can do is if they do something, whether it's our assessment or another one, and they never share the results, then that actually makes things worse because you're eroding trust. You asked employees, share your thoughts, answer these questions, and they do, and then there's no acknowledgement. I have a colleague who has a tool. It's an employee engagement tool where it's something like 5 questions a month. Every employee answers these, and it's really quick. It's like 30 seconds. But he had a client that was a very big name in the cosmetic industry.
Okay. And
they did this assessment, and they said, the results are so bad, we're not going to share them with our employees.
This is like the biggest mistake ever.
I know. And then I forget what exactly he said, but he said like share like over like he followed them like over the years and just like their market share and their stocks were going down. He's like, and it's like I said before, even if it's bad news, share that information. People should be adult enough to understand nothing's perfect. Everything is growing, evolving, adapting. If we all, going back to this whole community thing, if we all have a part in let's work on this. Let's fix this. Let's solve this.
Mm-hmm. Not
Oh
just
my goodness.
avoid it.
Right.
I see avoidance a lot of the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's they can see the they can see the problem. Maybe haven't considered the impact
Right.
of what happens if we do nothing.
So the nonprofit that I mentioned that brought us in because they said they had some culture issues, and it was, let's say it was March or April, and they said, well, we did. We had our HR consultant do an employee survey, 12 questions, whatever. And I'm like, oh, we did that in January. We're talking to them in March.
Yeah.
Okay. Have you shared the results with your employees? No. We don't even, she just gave us the results. She didn't have a conversation with you about what they mean or whatever. And the CEO says, no, but the results are pretty good. So as part of our engagement, we said, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. We have our own tool usually, but we analyze and give recommendations. So we'll happily do what your HR consultant should have done.
Yeah.
And we'll analyze the results. So I analyzed the results, and I just did it visually. So wrote the question, wrote down what their responses were, and then I put, either a happy face, an unhappy face, or just kind of a neutral. And so he says, yeah, it's pretty good. Out of the 12 questions, I think I had 2 happy faces, 5 or 6 unhappy faces. And then, because in his mind, if somebody answered neutral, mm-hmm. it was the same as a positive.
Yeah, that's not accurate.
No, there's a whole lot of reasons why somebody can say neutral, but why can't they agree? Mm-hmm. Why can't they strongly agree?
Yeah, what would it take for them to agree?
Right. So it was just interesting. Oh, no, our results are pretty good. Okay, I'm looking at... So that's the... Data is great, mm-hmm. but if you don't use the data and you don't use it as a tool to help you, then it's not worth it. So when we engage with our clients with the company climate inventory, we say, if you're not going to share this with your staff, then don't even bother engaging us, because this is one of our requirements. We can't force them to do it, but we do let them know that if they're not going to, we don't want to work with them.
Yeah, this is the process.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there an ideal size of an organization that this is a good fit for, that this is a great tool for? Should they be at least a certain number of employees for it to be truly effective, or can it be a very small team as well? So
that's a great question. So as far as upper limits, there's really no upper limit. Mm-hmm. We do have a minimum, just because then it gets really hard to protect the anonymity. Mm-hmm. So we would not do it for under 10 or 12 people. Okay. Just because, again, confidentiality is really important to us. And so if we can't maintain that because it's too small of a team, mm-hmm. then we won't do it. The advantage of a much larger organization doing it is that then there is ability to filter. So we had an investment property management company that had 4 offices in the U.S. and 4 offices worldwide in 4 other countries. And 120 people. So we were able to filter by things like home office versus regional offices, mm-hmm. Departments, tenure with the company. And so we could see trends like, well, your accounting department has these issues, mm-hmm. and that doesn't show up in your investment department. They have these different issues, or this is what's important to them. And we could see the differences by role, by department, by tenure, mm-hmm. which you can loosely equate to generational.
Yeah.
Different, not mm-hmm. exactly, but a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's very helpful. So, people want to be able to take action right away, right? They're listening to the episode. They believe culture is important. They believe they should invest more time and energy and effort into it. What is something like an actionable behavior, something that can be done right away, that's easy to do but can have a major impact?
I will tell you my very favorite thing that they could do today is set up 15-minute conversations with your team. And so if it's in a larger organization, each team would do that, and then if you have the leadership team, they would do that, to really showcase the power of that. Working with one of my clients, and he's got consultants working for him, and so establish those regular check-ins. And one of the consultants said, "Oh, this is like a wellness check-in." He said, "I thought we were just going to talk about work and the agenda, and you had questions about status of projects and whatever." And after doing that weekly, what he told me is, he said, "I will go to the wall for this company." He said, because it has shown me that they care, that this is a culture of a place that I want to work with. He said, so I will take on more work. I will do the best job I can do for this client, because of the culture that's been created.
Yeah.
It's not a waste of time. 15-minute check-ins, if you want to call it wellness check-ins, or just call it like, whatever. Let's have a conversation. And what I have experienced personally is, you might have an agenda for these. Like, there's a few things I just want to touch base on. Yeah, you could do it in email, but sometimes it's just better to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And, I don't really have anything on the agenda today. And then, like, some amazing ideas and brainstorming came out of it, because we didn't just go, there's no need to have the call today. I don't really have anything on the agenda. But you check in. I mean, you coach, know the value of accountability.
Oh, yeah.
And not just that regular check-in, but just knowing that, well, I'm going to be talking to this person every week or every morning or however people set it up. That's something that an organization could start to establish right now.
Okay. I like it, but I know that they're going to wonder how often they have to do it, because they think, I look at my schedule, I don't have time, right? I'm investing the 15 minutes. How often do I have to invest these 15 minutes in my people? What is your answer to that? What makes sense?
I'll give you my diplomatic answer.
Okay. You don't have to.
I have another non-diplomatic answer. It's 15 minutes. Get over yourself. Okay, that's my non-diplomatic answer. The diplomatic answer is, it's 15 minutes once a week. And maybe you have 5 people in your team, so we're talking 5 15-minute blocks. How much time do you spend checking email? Okay. How much time do you spend getting pulled away from whatever, or you got distracted, or whatever the case may be? Long ago, when I first started my business and I felt like I'm working all day long, I started tracking my time, not just for the clients, but even the stuff that I was doing in my business. Yeah. And both husbands have always remarked that I will clock out to go to the bathroom. Like, it's just, so when I have, this is how much I've worked today. I have an exact number. It does not include lunch. It doesn't include chit chat. It doesn't, whatever. That gives you a really good idea of your time. How are you spending your time? Do you need to be doing it? Clockwork, which is a great book by Mike Michalowicz. They have this whole thing that you go through, and you track your time for a week, and then you go through and analyze it, because some of us are data nerds, and you say, did I have to do it? Could I have delegated it? Could it be deleted? There's 4 Ds, and I can't remember the fourth one. But you're thinking.
I'm thinking.
Decision. That's it. Decision. Like, I didn't have to do it, but I have to make the final decision on it. And so it gives you a really good sense of how you're spending your time. So for the people, and everybody's busy, right? Nobody's not busy. Yeah. Are you busy with activities that you really should be busy with? One of our clients, we did the queen bee roll exercise, which is from Clockwork, with them, and she said, as CEO of a nonprofit, my counterparts are probably 75% external facing, meaning they're going to events and meeting with the public and all of that. She said, I think I'm about 45% external facing. I need to fix that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I think that exercise is awesome. I agree. I mean, I have another variation of that I do, like the 15-minute miracle, and they literally track in 15-minute increments for a period of 2 weeks. Everything that they do, we categorize, do the same type of thing, right? Very powerful. While we're talking about resources, it made me think of something else. Yesterday, I was compiling a list of what I call my essentials. I'm putting on my website, so it's like Sierra's go-to list of resources, right? I put on there the book. It's called Love Works by Joel Manby. Have you read that before?
I have not.
All right. I highly recommend it. But it goes along with what we're talking about in our conversation today. We don't talk about love at work typically, right? Mm-hmm. But that love and that care and compassion and how far it goes in showing I value you enough to spend 15 minutes a week with you.
There,
right?
Oh, there you go. You got a much better answer than I did.
We're not in competition.
No, but I will happily give you, credit and acknowledge the value that you bring.
Thank you. I'm like looking around. I don't know if it's in here or not. I try to stick some on the corners, but I'll have to let you borrow that if it's out here. I think you'd really enjoy that book.
Great. And another book for you to add to your essentials list, if you don't have it there already, is The Happiness Advantage by Sean
I do
Acor.
have it.
Oh,
yes,
have you read it?
I have.
Oh, my
Isn't
gosh.
it bright yellow?
It is bright yellow.
I can picture
The
it.
Happiness Advantage. And Mark and I, we read a passage during our morning tea ritual. And this is the book we're reading right now. And it is just spot on. He gives an example of, we're talking about being busy, and one of the stories he tells, if you remember, is about this guy who was like, I'm working 12, 14 hours a day. And Sean Acor actually like tracked what he was doing. And he's like, oh my gosh, he's checked his stocks like 10 times an hour. He was checking his email. He's like, he probably did like an hour of real work. Mm. And he didn't realize how distracted he was in these habits. And so they went to these great lengths to hide like the bookmarks to his stocks, portfolio. and I think he had to install email every time that he wanted to check it. But just these almost outrageous to break those habits. Mm-hmm. And of course that resulted in not just the guy was more productive, but he was happier because he wasn't sitting here going, I've been at work for 12 to 14 hours days and not getting anything done. Mm-hmm. Or I'm not, getting anything done. Well, no, because you're checking email
anything
and your stocks.
Important done.
Exactly.
Critical tasks
are
not complete. No, those are great resources. Thank you for sharing that as well. So I want to give you another opportunity to kind of share a little bit more about the Shuler Group. Is there any specific industry that you have worked a lot with or you really have enjoyed? Or you've seen this be really effective for, because it does work for everybody. But share a little bit about your experience as far as industry goes.
So we've done a lot of work with nonprofits. And just because one of the things I really like about nonprofits is they're very purpose-driven. Mm-hmm. And so they tend to have a bit of the trickle-down effect when it's like, oh, we have this purpose that we exist for in the world, and we think that's a good thing, and we value it, and we also sort of kind of value our people too. Yeah. There's a little bit of that trickle down. So nonprofits, and I realize that can also be kind of a broad thing because there's nonprofits in so many different arenas. Staffing industries as well has been, because again, if they're about placing the right people, keeping them happy, hearing their concerns, whatever it might be. So those are two industries. I could get in trouble for saying this, and if someone of your listeners says, I have a retail business, I work in restaurants.
Are you about to offend our listeners?
I might. Now there are exceptions, because I've been to some great restaurants that you can tell they value your people. I think one's called the White Rabbit in Frederick. Amazing. But most restaurants kind of have a revolving door when it comes to their staff. Mm-hmm. So are they really going to care about culture? Mm-hmm. Are they really going to care about communication?
Well, we all automatically think of what restaurant is known for caring about their people. Chick-fil-A. Everybody knows, like, the interactions with the people. They're happy. They want to be there, right? I can tell a difference when I go to Chick-fil-A, and sometimes I go there just because that experience, right? Even if I like the chicken somewhere else, right? But are you about to tell me that Chick-fil-A employees aren't as happy as I think they are?
No, I was not going to call any particular restaurant out for bad behavior. I was calling out a good restaurant, White Rabbit, and I want to say that's the name of it, in Frederick, Maryland. And it's just amazing. We went 2 or 3 different times and saw the same thing each time, and it was, we didn't have one wait person. And Mark, because he'll talk to anybody and everybody, he's like, so I noticed that everybody's just sort of pitching in. They said that's what we do. We don't have assigned tables. We have this atmosphere of cooperation, and we help each other out, and at the end of the day they share all the tips.
Yeah, and everybody pulls their weight that way.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen some restaurants that do it like that too, and it is unique. It shouldn't be unique, right? It should be commonplace.
Right,
but...
and so going back, I tend to sound like a broken record, but it's that what they've done is they've created that we're all in this together.
Yeah. All right, so we always do a branching out challenge. What would you like to challenge our listeners to do based on what they've heard today?
Oh, I didn't know the caveat was based on what they've heard today. I'm just like, what I think anybody and everybody should do. Okay, so based on what you've heard today, well, I can make a connection to the answer that I want. So let me do the answer, which is work on being as self-aware as possible. Okay. I think that the research says something like 85% of people say that they're self-aware, or it might be like 92%, it might be something like 92%, and really only something like 15% are actually self-aware. So more than likely, that's most of us.
Yeah.
I like to think I'm self-aware, but I know I can always work on it. And there's all sorts of things you can do. Pay attention to your body. Are you feeling a certain thing in a certain place? Or, you had this thought. Why did you think that? What's going on? Mark calls it like a radio station call letters. I think once an hour, a radio station has to say what its call letters are. You're listening to KMGC, which was my favorite radio station when I was growing up.
I was like, where did that come from?
In the Dallas suburbs. It doesn't exist anymore, and I'm so sad. But, but they have to state their call letters.
Okay.
So what if once an hour, check in with yourself. How am I feeling? What's going on with me? And to tie that in to what we've been talking about, because the more self-aware you are, this is the first pillar of emotional intelligence. And the more self-aware you are, the more you can manage yourself, the more you can be more part of that community. You can understand that if somebody said something a certain way or whatever, and it triggered you or kind of made you do that little why was that? And it's just, then we can all work better together.
I love it. That's the perfect challenge. And you managed to fit both in.
I did.
It is all connected.
I can make a connection between any two things.
Okay, so where can folks find you? Where can they learn more about the Shuler Group?
Absolutely. So it's www.theshulergroupllc.com. And the Shuler Group LLC.com is spelled without a C.
Okay.
Except for the LLC. But Shuler does not have a C. It's SHULER.
Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. And we'll be sure to post a link as well. I thank you so much for being here and sharing value with our listeners. I appreciate it. And
this was great.
You're always welcome to come back, and we can dive into something else. Communication, even one of those broad topics, right? You're always welcome. But thank you for taking the time. But as you said, we're all busy, and so investing the time to come off the mountain and trek all the way in here for this, I do appreciate it. And those of you that have been to my office in Winchester before, you've seen Dawn's beautiful artwork on the walls. So she is a woman of many talents. Do you want to mention that before we go?
Sure. Kind of like... And again, I can make a connection between any two things. At the very beginning, when we talked about leaders and leadership, and that we said everybody is a leader. I feel the same way about art and creativity. Everybody's creative. And so people who say, "Oh, I can't do art. I can't draw a straight line to say," it's like, it doesn't have to be that. And maybe you're creative in the way you decorate your home. Maybe you're creative in the way you cook a meal, or flower arrangement, or
the way you paint your face in the mornings for
right,
some of these
exactly.
women.
Mark drives me nuts because we got a piano last year, and he has the ability to hear something, and he goes over and he does what he calls plunk it out on the piano. I can't for my life. He's like, "Can't you hear that? That's a." I'm like, I can read music. I know that that's a C, D, whatever. And he's like, "I don't know what all that is, but can't you hear that?" No, I can't hear that. But he's creative in that way that he can hear something and he can somehow translate it over in this other area. So that's the piece, is that we're all creative. We're all leaders. And, if we delved into my 4 and 5 core values, beauty and color, it's so important to me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I definitely connect with that because we just had a conversation. Matthew always drums all the time on everything. He always can tap out the beat. He hears the drums that I don't even hear in music. I grew up learning to play guitar by reading music. I cannot hear things like anyone else can. I just can't. If you give me a sheet of music, I'll be happy to play it. But myself and my parents got together and got him these digital drum set. There's no drums. It's just 2 drumsticks, and it's very cool.
Wow.
So got him that for Christmas. And he can listen to things and just pick up on them. And same thing with his electric guitar. And it drives me nuts because he can sit down, pick it up, hear something, and start playing. Yep. And I'm like, I don't have music for that. I don't know how to do that. I can't hear things. I'm struggling with chords. So yeah, that's definitely impressive. But when you said that about not being creative, which I've said 8,000 times before that I'm not creative, and I think I said it to the wrong person one day. Many of my clients are interior designers who are very creative. And one of the clients recommended the book, The Artist's Way. Have you heard of it?
Yep.
Okay. I've purchased it. I have it. I haven't dug into it yet, but she seems to think that it will help me to bring out some of my creativity. Would you agree? Is it a good resource?
Absolutely. And so I also have a modality that I created several years ago, and I call it the 7 creator personality types.
Okay.
And I'll try to find that and send it to you. I think I have it on somewhere in the Shuler Group, as a blog post or something. But we do create from different things. One of them is a model, and I'm definitely that. You give me a model, and I will try to recreate it. Like you, I'm a very technical musician.
Yeah.
Same thing with my quilting. Give me a pattern. I'm really creative at picking out the fabrics, but don't ask me to design a pattern. No, that sounds impossible.
I just follow instructions.
Right. And then there's the divinely inspired, and there's the storyteller. So there's these different, again, just ways that we are creative, or our person, or our specific type that we gravitate toward.
Yeah, no, I'd love to see that. That sounds like a great resource. Well, I hope that some people can stop by and see more of your artwork. Is it online anywhere right now that people can find it? Okay,
you're so nice. It's at South Mountain Crafts and .com. That is plural. It's called South Mountain Crafts because when we were in Maryland, we lived on South Mountain. So
there you go.
Named the business. And then we moved to Virginia, and now we live on Great North Mountain. So we lived in Frederick County, Maryland. Now we live in Frederick County, Virginia, on a mountain. And so I just kept the name.
Yeah.
I should have named it Dragon Mountain Crafts, but then everybody would have thought all the art was dragons.
Yeah, I would make that assumption too. I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so people can find that as well. Awesome. See, there was another layer there to you that you hadn't shared. There are many others.
I'm like a parfait. I got lots of layers.
I love it. And she likes Shrek too.
Good job.
Awesome.
Good job.
Thanks for being here.
Thank
I appreciate
you, Sarah.
it.
It's been fun.
All right, so thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the episode. I hope you found value and something that you could implement right away today, even if it's those 15-minute conversations or greater self-awareness. There are tons of strategies. We have so many resources at our fingertips today. So if there is something you want to develop further, a simple Google search today will help you. Just take action. As always, we release a new podcast episode on Fridays at noon Eastern Standard Time, so be sure to subscribe so you get those notifications. And until next time, keep branching out.